think we'll run and hide? We've got our boots laced up and ready, standing firm with stubborn pride. Who do you think you are kidding, Mr. Putin? If you think we'll run prepared, our hearts are strong, our will unbroken, every soul is battle squared. Your shadow creeps, but we see through it. Your bluster's just a hollow game. You may march, but we're not shaken. Our spirits roaring just the same. We've got our flags high, flying steady. Our voices loud, we'll make it clear. The world is watching, the line is drawn. We'll defend what we hold dear. Who do you think you are kidding, Mr. Putin? If you think we'll disappear. This land is ours and we're united. Every heart beats loud with cheer. So step away or face the thunder. This is a fight you cannot win. Who do you think you are kidding, Mr. Putin? If you think we'll let you win.
Yay! We're live!
Live.
So, as you might have noticed, guys, we've got a slight change to the agenda tonight. Our illustrious leader is driving home at the moment and he's got work tomorrow. After, despite his protests, Mike did a fantastic job with his bike challenge, and he did a fantastic job and achieved a lot for Help for Heroes. So he's done it. He's played a blinder. He just doesn't know it yet. So you're stuck with myself, Hawkins, Alan, and Ben for tonight. Start with Ben. How's it going, mate?
All good, all good. How's it going with you, buddy?
Any happier? I couldn't live with myself, mate.
Look what's going on in the world. Keeps us on our toes, keeps us busy.
It does. Alan, how's things? I saw you on Shadow Scout the other night.
Yeah, I'm doing good. Shadow Scouts, they're always good. They live streams. They go on forever though. I was bursting for the toilet halfway into it. I thought I'll just wait. But, yeah, good mate.
Good. Hawkins, our ever-present man of mystery. How's it going?
Yeah, I'm all good, mate. Certainly better than Mike's feeling at the moment, so can't complain.
Well, we did tell him that, the seat wasn't an optional extra and the post wasn't going to work. But fair play, his parents raised no quitters and he did it. Yep.
Well,
so
rather him than me. It's not something I would have been able to do, that's for sure. To hell with that.
No. He took it well. 178 miles, he did well. He was a legend. So tonight, as the headline hinted, is a discussion on winter preps. Do we need to change anything from the summer season to the winter season? Do you change anything personally? And just to see what everybody does, get some ideas out there for us and see if we need to change our own preps. So, Ben, do you make any seasonal changes as you get into the autumnal season for winter or whatever? What do you do differently now, if anything?
Oh, pretty much. It's a massive deep clean in the house. We deep clean everything top to bottom, put all our sheets that we've used in the summer going into autumn. Because it's like now we had the 4 heat waves, in a sense, back to back. So we kept our very thin sheets out. Now we're bringing out our 10.5 tog, I think it is. The wifey knows the togs better than me. But our thicker blanket out and the Sleep Bright thermal mattress cover, because the arthritis needs the warmth in the winter. So
you go for domestic changes like that. What
Pretty
about
much.
your prepper stores or maintenance or anything like that? Is there anything you do different in regard to that?
Not really. I mean, I just make sure I keep the solar panels all clean, make sure they're all moss free, because I had a bit of build up on them the other day because I've been a bit lazy and been bothered to actually give them a clean. So they've been cleaned. But mainly just testing my power banks, because somebody told me a while back that in the winter, the drainage on the power banks I got a little, let me get it actually, one with a built-in torch like this. And this one tends to die a lot quicker in the winter on its own accord, even if it's not being used. So genuine maintenance. That's it. I don't really
Battery.
too much in the sense of food preps on, I think, except rotation of stock, but the rest is all right.
There's this who's put it, winter preps get a wood burner like a real prepper. I know, sadly, I am not a real prepper, as we all know. If shit hits the fan, I'll have to set fire to the couch, hopefully drag it into the garden first. Hawkins, we'll jump to your good self. You might have a slightly different spin on this now because you invested in some electrical improvements this season. So is that going to have any impact on your preps?
Electrical improvements. Makes life easier, doesn't it, if there's a power outage? Obviously, I don't know yet. I'm still gathering data from running it all and stuff, but certainly in the summer months, in a grid down, I would make far too much power than I could ever use. And obviously that's going to curtail off towards the winter season. But I think even in winter, the deepest, darkest estimates were like a minimum of 5 kilowatt hours a day. So that would always be enough to power the fridge freezers, which is kind of the only thing that we really, really care about should a power outage occur. So that would certainly buy time to think about things. But I suppose prepping towards winter now, over the next month or so, sorting the garden out. I've already thrown the 6 kilo propane tanks in the back of the van to get filled up this weekend or this week, and then throw them back under the gas barbecue. Winterize the garden fully. Probably go through a rotation because it'll be about a month's time to kind of drain everything that I've got, which takes a LifePo 4 battery. So radios, gadgets. If you ever come around, you'd understand how big a task that is with the amount of electronic gadgets that I've got in this house. But try and work through everything basically and give it a cycle. So that way I've done it twice in a 12-month period. And then I don't stock up anything extra for food because everything's kind of full already. So then the other things would be I'll have a little dig through the old get home bag that sits in the van, the work van that is, and make sure that's all kind of good for winter. And then throw my big coat because I'm a northerner, so just put my big coat in the van, and should the worst happen, just put my big coat on and I'll be fine, won't I?
Drag the van out of a ditch with the big coat on and walk home. I like it. Alan, I've came to you last because probably out of everybody here, with how you tend to do things, you'll probably have more changes or seasonal changes than the rest of us. Do tell.
The seasonal changes for me are always very, very planned and very laid out. So I mean, I've got two sides. There's the domestic side, and then there's the wilderness camping type stuff that I do as well. So we'll go into more detail on the domestic side, I'm sure. I mean, for me, we're kind of a month early. I don't really do much of the domestic side until round about October time. That's when I start battering down the hatches a little bit. So that's vehicle preparation, the garden, the house. Like I've said before in other videos, I've only lived in this house a few years, and it's prone to storm damage, as I've discovered. So there's things I'm going to put in place for that. I'm not going to get caught out for the third time. I say, but there seems to always be something. I've got a big trampoline and that's caused me problems in the past. So all of that stuff, the pipes.
You mean the glider?
Stuff. Oh yeah, I've got the biggest trampoline in the street, and at one point it ended up on my shed, and that was a nightmare.
Have you not got the ground anchors that you screw into the the half-inch impact driver? Yeah,
I have everything now. Everything you could possibly conceive to hold this thing down. Sandbags, water containers, the screw things, the works. But yeah, I mean, that's the domestic side of it. But from the wilderness side of it, the autumn time, as I refer to it, is my favourite time of year. It's a great time of year to be out in the woods in the UK. There's no bugs. You can see a lot of the vegetation. You can do a lot of stuff. I like the colder nights because fires and stuff feel cozier. You can start using different kinds of gear. I like to camp on the ground rather than in trees like I do in the summertime. So I change a lot of my kit over from the summer stuff to the winter stuff, and I've got a process for that. We might talk about it later on, but really it's just winter gear is heavier, bulkier, and it's really a case of moving my small bag items into my big bag items and a bit of a clothing change. The kit itself doesn't change a lot. It will depending on whether I'm going into an extremely cold place. So if I go up a summit or something, I'll take different kinds of gas or fuel based on where it is I'm going. So I'll adapt my cooking methods. But other than that, it's much the same. But this is also the time of year where I start buying my summer gear. Because it's always the way that the summer gear is cheaper in the winter and the winter gear is cheaper in the summer. And so I have a process twice a year where I start browsing the sites and starring things on Amazon and stuff that I want to update my preps with.
Oh, thank you very much, Mark's Adventures. That's very kind of you.
I think he's confused and thinks Mike's still actually cycling.
It'll all go to the Help for Heroes cause. Again, it's very kind, and Mike's had a lot of outlays personally for this, so it'll all be gratefully received, I'm sure. Renegade prepping, sit in the centre. God, he's not even here and he's still bullying people about.
It's the camera, it's not me. I'm still the way I normally sit.
This is what inevitably happens. I've seen this coming, to be honest. It's a bit like one of those TV shows where the star of the show starts to get slightly outshined by the co-star, and before you know it, Brian's the main man. And
I'm surrounded by idiots.
I was wondering what he's going to do when like the viewership goes through the roof tonight, and we've got 20,000 live watchers, and Mike realizes it's him that's been letting the channel down.
Just so everybody knows, Mike's still monitoring the channel, and he's listening in as he's travelling home at the moment, and he's got a whole list of things itching to play in the background, I'm sure, and that one was... Yep, there we go.
Hawkins, you should have printed out an image of his face and just wore it like a mask.
Pretended to be him.
Yeah.
A baboon's butt. So, my own winter preps. When I travelled away a lot, I would tend to carry about 10 gallons of diesel in the vehicle, about 18 little packets of bottles of water, and about 4 of the American MRE self-heating wrap packs, 2 sleeping bags, 1 heavy, 1 lightweight summer one as a liner, and a shovel, a hat, and I think a couple of books, if I'm being honest. That was about it. And a second, the phone's ringing at the same time. So that was that. But when I started doing more of the prepping things at home, domestically, one thing when we're on the front of talking about solar and things, for people that have got domestic solar and batteries, wintertime, don't forget to change your tariffs. So obviously we're not getting as much sunshine, so you want to maximise your batteries by changing to a tariff such as maybe Octopus Cozy, in which you'll get 3 charging windows. So it'll knock about 2/3 off your bill that way alone, because your unit costs lower. I can't read this for you. What's Andy said?
It says, it's the Bombardier saying, guys, Hawkins said he's in charge tonight, so said I wasn't allowed on, said he preferred Ben and Alan. And that's absolutely true, because he's just got a bad attitude. He's not a real prepper. He's not got a wood burner.
He's staring at the sky right now. That's what I thought he was doing.
Andy was asked, but he's out. And I hope Miss Worm can share it, but Andy's also running a secondary channel on UFOs, which is pretty good, actually. And he's out doing some UFO spotting. Or did he say he was... I've watched the videos, they're quite good. He did say he was going out to get probed, but I thought that meant UFOs, so I'll give him the benefit of the doubt.
That was Mike last week on his bike ride.
And if you're going to switch to Octopus, ask Mike for a link. Yes, good call. You'll also get 50 quid each if you do that. I believe that's the split in the tariff. So, have we got any questions queued up, Hawkins?
Nobody's asked a thing yet, mate, that I've noticed.
I'll chuck one in.
No. Go for it.
Have any of you thought about having a blackout kit?
I have a blackout kit.
Okay, cool.
Depends what you mean by a blackout kit. So a blackout kit for me is a torch in every room.
Yep.
And redundant power systems in case the lights go out, and secondary heat sources, secondary lighting sources. So for me, the blackout kit would be battery backup for the house, 10 kilowatts of solar panels, 10 kilowatts of power banks and a standby generator, and probably about 340 candles.
Okay.
Ish.
All right, then what I'll do, I'll emphasize on that a bit then, because that is a bit of a broad spectrum. Because when you said you'd have a torch in every room, what I mean by
Yeah.
a blackout kit is an actual dedicated kit, a small one, nothing big, but it actually came from the wife. She gave me a bit of a scenario to run through in the house with her, and I was like, okay, go for it. And the scenario was, you know where everything is in your house, but if you are in a situation where you're stuck out in a hotel or something, and you don't know the layout of that hotel that well, if you for some reason are so tired you've just gone straight to bed, and SHTF, there you go. I had to get that right this time. Yeah, she said, well, you would need a kind of a kit. So if they lost all power and you had no way of seeing your way to that door or throughout that hotel, how are you going to do it? And I just immediately didn't think like a prep. I went, I got my phone. And she went, what happens if you couldn't charge it? All
I
right,
wouldn't go to sleep.
yeah, exactly. So I was like, all right, give me an idea. What would your like bug out kit be? And she put headlamp, batteries, lantern, radio, a power bank, and 2 bottles of water and a power bar. So I think she means like a snack bar. I got some of her notes because she's looking after the kiddies for us. But yeah, no, that's what she would label a blackout kit.
You know,
I don't think it's a bad idea. Sorry, Alan. On you go.
I was just going to say, when you were laying out that kit there, it actually reminds me of something that a while ago I was watching something to do with the subway in New York, and all the trains stopped. I went, and it was properly blackout in the subway. And I remember at the time, because I was traveling to London sometimes, that could happen in the London Underground. And I looked it up, and it had happened a couple of times, not very often, but it does happen. And so I started carrying a similar kit. You know, I didn't have spare battery stuff, but I had a head torch and one of those small power banks to it's a rechargeable head torch. Anyway, I added that to my little bag that I used to carry around, and that was really just as a sort of blackout kit for the underground. It was its only function, because try to walk through a railway tunnel in the dark, which is what they do in those situations with some rubbish light. You know, that could be a real problem. And it reminded me of remember the attacks that took place in the London Underground.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know, and there's been fires and attacks and all sorts of things. And then you had that subway attack in, I think it was St. Petersburg as well. They also had to fight through pitch black smoke and all sorts of stuff. And, you know, so your phone light might come in handy, but you want something on your head. And if you've got your phone, you want to be using that as a phone probably, or try to get a signal. Yeah. And having something, you know, hands-free could make all the difference. So a head torch goes a long way, and they weigh almost nothing. So throw them in every bag is what I say.
Yeah, I got one.
So don't take the piss out of me, because I missed it on the Scottish meet. But and you all took the piss out of people who do it. But I carry a man bag around with me. Yeah, so it's a 511 man bag. But in that would be pretty much what you said. I carry 2 lights, torches, big power bank.
I bet your man bag is the same as my man bag. Is it the Moab 10 by any chance?
It depends. So I've got a Maxpedition one that slings over my shoulders as like a crossbody one, and then I've got a 511 sort of satchel one, like I don't know what you call it, one of them courier messenger bags. And that was because I was a couple of years ago working down London Way again, was on tubes and stuff, and it seemed slightly less conspicuous than the Maxpedition one that I was carrying at the time. But in that, there's power banks, iFax, Kindle, chargers, leads, torches, firelight and stuff, pens, you know, everything you'd ever kind of want to be stuck in a train, really.
It kind of
I was going to say
type stuff, eh?
Yeah. I was going to say, when I worked in London, even last year when I was down for a few weeks working, I probably didn't have anything like that. And then I was thinking, well, actually, my backpack that I carried for work had torches, tape measures, release keys, London Fire Brigade keys, all sorts of shit. So I at least had 3 torches in it, a head torch, and 2 mag lights. So I was about to say I don't do that, and then I remembered, I did. What's this? Why a man bag? I can get more in my backpack. Horses for courses, isn't it? I suppose it depends what you're comfortable carrying in your day-to-day leisure or work activities. But as long as you're carrying it, I think that's really the message that we're trying to get out there. Mike, if you're still kicking about and you'd some starved questions, do you want to fire one in?
I've got 4 written down if you want.
What was
there
the
you go.
most useless thing you had in your first winter kit? Hawkins, you've been talking. You can take it. Giggity.
Useless thing in my kit. No, I'm not Mike. I don't take it like that. Most useless thing that I've ever had in my first winter kit. The only thing I've probably never used that's been in my winter kit that's gone in a vehicle, weirdly, is a propane stove. That's probably the only thing I've never used. I don't do hot drinks. I'm not a hot drinker. I'm a Pepsi Max drinker. But I used to carry one should the need ever arise, and it's never arisen. So that's probably the only thing that's sat in my winter kit. I've used hand warmers, I've used extra clothes, I've used food, I've used whatever, but I've never used a propane stove. So I'll go with that. Even though it could be a lifesaver, that's the one thing I've never used.
Fair enough. Same question, Ben.
I bought a winter car kit back, I think it was about 4 or 5 years ago. And I was unlucky to have a radio, lovely little radio, but it was a factory defect.
Ah.
Yeah.
So you didn't try it first?
No, I tried it first, and nothing was working with it. And I thought, okay, now I'm good at tinkering. I'll open it up and have a look. Didn't have a look, and nothing was connected inside. So put it back together with pictures, sent it back to the supplier. Fair play, they sent me a brand new one. But yeah, that was utterly useless for the first 2 weeks of having it. So
that's unavoidable. At least you didn't put it in the bag in time of need. Went to use it. That's probably been the worst case scenario. Alan, what about your good self? Which steaming pile of shit have you bought?
Well, I've probably had a few different things over the years, and I've dialed my kit down so much that I hate redundant stuff. I'm kind of against the idea of grab bags and stuff if you don't use the stuff in the grab bag. So everything I would consider to be a bug out bag or a grab bag or an inch bag or any of the other names, it's just my camping gear. It's just my gear. So I'm always using it. Even the survival kits and stuff that I have, it's all things that I've always used. I did at one point, I was carrying, Hawkins was talking about the hand warmers. I had a Zippo one for a while, which requires fuel. And I thought that's a fantastic idea. And I could think of all sorts of uses for it. And honestly, I carried this in my bag for, 10 years. I think I used it once. And you have to carry a little bottle of fuel with it as well. And I thought, you know what, I'm just going to not use this anymore. And I kind of binned that. I've got a couple of what I would call kind of redundant items, not really in my camping gear, but in my car. Everybody says you'll bring a warm blanket or a warm jacket or something if you get caught out in the winter. And it just so happens I happen to know a couple of people who work offshore, and they gave me a flotation suit. It's a full-on one-piece flotation suit. It's way overkill. I mean, this thing's designed for you to fall in the North Sea and float and survive. But I've vacuum packed it and put it into my car kit. So if I ever break down at the side of the road, I'm going to be donning this big blue bloody North Sea, which cost an absolute fortune, by the way. So I mean, in a way, that's kind of overkill. That's redundant. I made a video about
the ambulance rescuing you for hypothermia, it'll be hyperthermia because you'll be overheating.
Yeah, I mean, I posted the video and I got grief from people immediately saying, "Are you insane? I just looked it up. It's 900 quid." I'm like, well, you don't need to use this. Go just take a jacket. But it's what I had, so I'm not going to not use it. I'm never going to be on an oil rig in the North Sea, so I may as well put it somewhere where I might use it, which is my car.
Port West do ones like that. They're quilted overalls, reflective overalls, because I had a job where one site in particular was always freezing. So I'd bought these things at like 60 quid, but they're reflective overalls, but they're all quilted and they're good for down to about -12. And see, for sticking in your car, fantastic. They're worth it just for that. Right, last one from me then before we go into that.
Before you chair on there, just let me. So, survivalist. I've just completely forgot your name, mate. Sorry. Basically, you're talking about the Zippo hand warmers.
Yeah.
Have you seen the electric ones?
No.
They're about 25, 30 quid. They're a 10,000 milliamp hour battery. The USB-C PD charge, and if you buy the decent ones, and they got 3 heat settings. And honestly, they're absolutely fantastic. I work outside, or used to work outside. Now I'm a spreadsheet bitch, but I used to work outside for my job all day in winter. And honestly, throw one of these in each of your pockets, fantastic. And when your hands are freezing and it's like 0 outside and you're working with your hands, there's like a sparky or whatever, throw your hands back in your jacket. And honestly, it's like 50, 60 degrees in there. You get them on Amazon by a Cooper Like fantastic little things.
I've seen the motorcycle clothing versions of it, which is you can get warming jackets and gloves and that for motorcycles, and I've also seen the liners as well. It looks like a foil waistcoat that's powered up to a small power bank, and it works the same sort of way. So I've seen them. I've never tried them. No way. I always thought that would be one of those things that would break after about 3 uses. But I mean, if you swear by it, I'll maybe check it out.
I swear by the hand warmers, and my mate bought the fleece jacket one with the heaters in it and plugged the power bank into that, and he swore by that, and he must have used that for about 3 years while I worked with him, and it was great. So something to look into if you work in the colder environments.
I'll have a look at that, mate. I might even get a link off you in Discord later if you got it.
Yeah, I definitely work in cold environments, so it's probably something I should be looking into.
Before I jump onto Rob's question, one useless thing I bought was my first folding shovel. And the first time I used it, it fell to bits because I bought one and it came in a little pouch, and I was in a Toyota Hilux with no phone signal down the bottom of a side of a mountain outside a remote power station, and I couldn't get back up the hill even in 4-wheel drive, and I thought I'll just dig myself out with this little shitty folding shovel, and after a couple of scoops it snapped in two. So check your preps, use your preps.
I'm surrounded by idiots.
As some people have shown you, who everything they touch either spontaneously combusts, floods, or generally goes wrong, learn by other people's screw-ups, and you've came to the right place here, because either it'll happen to me or somebody else who remains nameless. Mike. Here's one for Rob, or from Rob.
You will not cry.
He's a control freak, isn't he?
He's in his element. Brian touched on it before. What do people do for winter vehicle preps? Alan, do you want to take this one first?
So winter vehicle preps. So I've got a car and a motorbike. The motorbike's newer than the car. The car's a bit of a banger. So, I mean, out with ordinary maintenance of the car itself and the bike itself, I've changed my my service dates so that it's in the winter. So my bike's service, it used to be in the summer, now it's at the end of October. That's when I winterize my bike. I put it away for the winter, and I have a trickle charger which keeps the battery ticking over and things like that. I fill up the fuel tank right to the max, and I put a fuel stabilizer in there as well, and that just prevents moisture and things like that building up. I put a sheet over it sometimes as well to try and stop the condensation, but I kind of get a little bit of it in the shed as it is. With the car, it's kind of similar. Same sort of maintenance program as well. I have a dedicated box that I always carry in my car. It's always winterized anyway. The only thing that I would perhaps consider putting into it is, if I knew there was going to be more than just me in the car, there's very unlikely to be any more than 2 people in my car, to be honest, at any one time. But if there was going to be more people, I'd probably consider putting in a couple more jackets or a couple of wool blankets or something like that. I don't have like special tires or chains or anything like that because I'm too broke to buy the tires, and the chains I think are unnecessary. I will consider taking things like grit with me though, and a snow shovel if it's snowing. If it's snowing and things like that. And I've also heard cat litter is quite good for getting a bit of friction under the tires if you find yourself on black ice. I've never tried it, but I did at one point carry a bag of it because I'd heard that was a good thing to do.
Friction is always good.
Yellow teapot's about to be pulled over by the police next time they're driving the car if they always keep an accident.
Hawkins, have you got anything in particular you do?
So personally, I don't really drive much in my personal life outside of work because I hate the roads because they're full of fuckwits who can't drive. But for work, I drive about 70 miles, 140 mile round trip a day at the moment. So I throw, yes, fucking shit. But so I throw again, kind of the bag and I've discussed before. I have some rat packs in there. I have a crate of water in there. But for winter specifically, I have a large inflatable mattress that can lay down in the back of my little Transit Connect that I drive, and I have a winter sleeping bag and a blanket as well. And if I had to, I'd just pull over at the side of the road, inflate it in the back of the or let it inflate itself in the back of the van, and then just bury it in for the night.
So now your boss knows that the 70-mile trip is taking you 3 hours because you're in a lay-by sleeping for an hour and a half. Is that what we're saying?
My boss can see exactly where I am because my vans are tracking me, unfortunately.
Ben, what about your good self?
I just go with the typical stuff. I keep an extra pair of really sturdy, either JCB or rigger boots, whichever I get the cheapest in a deal. I scrape some de-icer, a bag of wooden pellets. That's why I mentioned the wood pellet cat litter, because that does work amazing if you're bogged down in mud. It just clumps up under the tires, gives you a good bit of push, and you're out. It's good stuff. What else do we keep in ours? I have to think now. We keep extra snacks in the glove box, so we got like a little survival glove box. You got a little our car first aid kit, and then next to it, a couple of protein bars and a few like powdered milks for the kids if they need it, and an extra shovel and some jump leads. That's about it, really.
Good. For myself, more or less the same. I don't travel into north of Scotland anymore. I don't do remote working like that. So generally, tyre pressures in the run up to winter. I don't swap out winter tyres because it's a company car and I don't care that much about it. So I'll check my tyre pressures, potentially drop it a bit for snow. I carry snow socks in the boot. The cat litter thing I've never known about. I'll buy a bag of that and try it because that's a good tip. I'll take that on board. And yeah, that's about it. My bug out or get home bag I tweak for winter time and just change that round. But other than that, pretty much the same.
Have you used the snow socks before?
Yes. They tell you can reuse them. That's pretty much a lot of crap because as soon as you get out the snow, you ain't stopping. So you drive them through all sorts of slush, pebbles, bricks and everything on a good bit of road until you get to where you're going or they fall apart and disintegrate. So for me, they're one-use items and they're disposable. And snow chains I've never tried.
A couple of years ago, I was in Huddersfield working nights when the Beast from the East was on. And if you to get out of Huddersfield to get to work towards the M62, you've got to drive uphill, fairly decent bit of a couple of 100 feet, I'd say. Without snow socks, you couldn't go anywhere. So all the vans of all the lads in work were all just buried at the bottom of this road at like 2 o'clock in the morning with the snow coming down. And a couple of us who were on the books all had snow socks that we'd issued as part of the project, threw the snow socks on, and the difference it made, we just sailed straight up the hill and had to leave the other lads just at the bottom of the bottom of the hill in Huddersfield and just leave them behind. And they went back to the depot and stayed at the depot for the night. But snow socks really worked. Like you say though, I drove them for probably another half a mile to a mile after the snow. As you said, you don't want to stop. And they were absolutely trashed by the time I'd got to the top. They were just worn out, basically, kind of worn through them. But definitely recommend it for anyone.
They're quite pricey if you're buying them yourself for a one-use item. But I don't know how you would ever reuse them again because they just don't look too good at the end of it, even in a short duration trip.
So you see the winterization of your car can't be underestimated on this because the amount of people every single year people get trapped on motorways in the winter and you can't move. It doesn't matter if you can get out of it. You're just in a huge queue and people don't tend to dress properly for the winter if they're in their car. So if they know they're working in an office environment, the amount of people that will just jump in their car in their shirt and tie and their normal shoes, and then they know they've got a 30-mile commute, and then they're getting into a warm office. But they could end up trapped in the motorway overnight. I mean, I used to commute from where I used to live in a town called Livingston. I used to commute to near Glasgow, a place called Eurocentral on the M8. And that's a notoriously terrible motorway just generally. But in the winter, it came to a stop completely a few times. Now, luckily, the longest I ever spent in my car was about 4 hours. But, I mean, that's a 40-minute drive normally, and it took 4 hours. And there was people on the M6 that winter that were out overnight, and nobody really came to help them. I think they were getting checked on by the emergency services and getting handed bottles of water, but that was it. A lot of them were running out of fuel and stuff because they thought they could just keep their car on all day, and you can't really do that, especially if you're on fumes. And so dress properly. And weirdly enough, this sounds stupid, but see one of those big candles, the 12-hour type candles, if you keep that in your car as well with some matches or a lighter, you can turn your car off, put that on. It gives you a little bit of ambient light, but there is a little bit of heat because you're in an enclosed car and you've got your body heat. It will also put a little bit of heat as well. So carry a candle as well. Although crack the window now and again if you're going to like, eat all your air.
I've just visions now of people stuck for a 20-minute traffic jam in winter, getting burnt to death in a car after following this advice.
We know
Just
the
these
first
people
person
from
to do that will be,
flames
don't we?
clawing at the window.
Use naked flames.
on fire in an electric car. It's going to be Mike.
Yeah.
Yeah, funnily enough, the missus actually just quickly brought up my grab bag that I used in London, which is now my work bag. I don't know if that's the same one you've got, Hawkins, but it's a small 5'11" bag. I think these are great for travel. It's not quite a backpack; it's a single sling thing. They're good for travel, but I always have, a head torch in there, and that was the subway thing.
Yeah.
Winter comfort favourite foods. Ooh. Soup.
Just to let you know, Brian, I've got about 6 questions lined up that I've copied out the chat. So once we're done, Phillips, I've got a few more to go through.
We'll run through them, mate. For me, favourite winter comfort food would be nice thick chunky soup and a tiger loaf. And just for the record, nobody's getting any of the tiger loaf. It's mine's, right? It's all for me. So that's pretty much mine's. Ben?
Definitely gotta have a stew. Doesn't matter what you throw in it, just a nice hearty stew. I love a stew. But if you're talking about tiger bread, then what I'm going to say is this. The next time I'm at prepper meet and you're there, I'm definitely going to be zipping up my tent and putting a padlock on it because my tiger bread's mine. Unless you want to go, bare knuckle brawl on this.
I've got a weight advantage, mate. It'll be sumo challenge for food. Yeah, I'll take that bet.
Advantage, but I got the stamina.
Hawkins. Yeah, don't aim for the ankles, Mr. Glass.
Yeah.
Similar to you two, anything that comes out of a crock pot, mate, in winter, isn't it? When you get home from work, you've had it in a crock pot all day, simmering away. And I second the tiger bread. One got delivered this morning, and sausage and bacon on it. Beautiful. So, yeah, crock pot and tiger bread, mate.
Alan, are you going to spoil the pattern here?
Well, I just take whiskey, but no, I mean, it's
whiskey and tiger bread.
Whiskey and tiger bread, one pot stew, Irish stew. Every winter I make something like that. I've got lots of Dutch ovens and stuff, and I've got a large winter TP setup that I sometimes use. It's a bit overkill, but I've got a few videos of me making one pot Irish stews. You just chuck everything in there, and that's the beauty of winter time. Stuff like that's kind of cozy, and you can cook it all day. It's great. It's a good outdoor food. You can throw beer and everything in it. Yeah, that's exactly what it's like. I've made it a dozen ways, so there's no one recipe. It always has alcohol in it for some description.
Well, it's all to keep you warm, mate. It's a survival tactic, that's all. Okay, Hawkins, what else have we got, mate?
So someone said, Hawkins, are the O-lights worth the extra money? I've looked at them, but they seem expensive for a torch. Yeah, they are decent torches. I've probably got, as Brian, if you can remember from the prepper meet, me and JP had a bit of an O-light off, didn't we, getting all our O-lights out? I think I only brought about 5 with me, but I've got about 10 to 15. Spent a fortune on them over the years, but yeah, they are decent torches. So yes, for that one. Next question.
I don't have any, so I'm out of that one. Alan, have you got a view on the O-light debacle?
When it comes to torches, I mean, I tend to go by head torches more than hand torches. I've got a couple of spotting torches which are handheld and they're very bright. And I did once see something talking about the use of torches as a self-defense mechanism. The bright light and the very high lumens. And there's lots of prepping utility and survival utility for very, very bright focused torches. Which it's a different topic altogether, but in some countries they're actually trying to make them illegal. So it's get your hands on them now, I would say.
Oh, like Javalots, I think they're called, are the kind of the long range ones. Here's one for you. So I work on the railway, and a couple of years ago in an engineering possession on a midweek night shift. Obviously, if you know anything about railway, engineering possession means there's no trains on. And I got a phone call off the ES, who's the engineering supervisor, telling me he's had reports that there's a train or something within the engineering possession. It was all chaos going on. And basically, I'd had 2 of my O lights out, which are 12,000 lumen each, so 24,000 lumen. And somebody had seen the light coming around a curve on the railway and assumed that it was a train coming around the curve. And the entire gang had jumped off track thinking that there's a train coming around the curve. And it was actually just me walking down track with 2 O lights in my hand. So...
So those questions asked then.
Yeah, I'm known to be a bit weird at work.
Yeah. You see the police, you know, with the police always shine their torch in your face when you're in your car and stuff. That's a very common tactic to disorientate people and destroy their night vision and stuff. And
What if you get one of those O-lights with the strobe feature off the back button? So as you grip the torch and you press it with your thumb, you'll literally get the strobe function. And honestly, that will daze anyone, day or night. Like if you just bang it into their face and press the strobe function, you'll disorientate anyone, doesn't matter who they are.
They use dazzlers in CQB and room clearances. That's fairly common. They'll have them on a wrist mount on the pistol or the rifle, whatever they're clearing the rooms with. They'll put dazzlers on them, allegedly.
Yeah.
What's the next one, mate?
How many of you are hot-blooded versus cold? I am hot-blooded, only cold if ill or very tired, or if it's Baltic. Very rarely use jumpers, good for acquiring extra cuddles in winter. So yeah, who's cold-blooded, hot-blooded?
I sleep with a fan on even in winter. It drives my wife nuts. The central heating's set for 22 degrees throughout the house. And in winter time, it could be like -7, and I'll have a fan on in the bedroom, and she goes bananas, absolutely bananas. So that's pretty much my answer, mate. Ben?
I'm Brian, and so's my wife!
Well, Ben, are you a lizard or? We
You're
can't
on
hear
mute,
you.
Ben.
You've muted your mic.
you're
Ben, you're mute.
There we go.
That's
We got
better.
I actually unclicked it twice. I think this is on its way out again. But hot-blooded I am.
yeah, I'm pretty cold-blooded. I think. I know. See, as I've been getting older, I seem to be getting more hot-blooded. I think that's probably just the layers that I'm starting to acquire naturally, if you know what I mean.
The winter coat.
the permanent winter coat. I'm taking on the persona of a walrus slowly. You know.
I'm wearing about 2 winter jackets as we speak, but it looks it. Right, I think we've covered that one. What's next on the agenda?
Somebody said my zip on my jacket has died. Recommended winter jackets. So I'm going to jump in there straight away with mountain equipment. I've got a lovely blue mountain equipment jacket that is absolutely toasty as, and I'll just leave it at that. Mountain equipment's my recommendation.
I have no recommendations at all because it's not something I know anything about. Alan, I've got a funny idea you might know something about this.
Yeah, I mean, if money's no object, right, or you can at least afford one, which is all I have. The company UF Pro, I've mentioned them before, but they are horrendously expensive. They do the world's best tactical winter clothing, hands down. I've done a ton of research across the board of all different kinds of brands and stuff going. UF Pro, I think they're Slovakian or something. They're amazing. I've got some of their stuff behind me.
You've posted the link on Discord before. I've had a mooch through that lot.
Not cheap. Not cheap.
No.
But yeah, that's what I would always say. Especially if you're in a
roughly?
I think
half an hour's work for you, Brian.
For the winter jacket I've got there, I'd have to quickly look it up, but you're talking for the basic winter jacket, you're talking about 350, I think, and then it goes up to about 600 quid for the bigger one.
I mean,
wow, that's.
Mike.
Say again, Ben. You went very quiet, buddy.
I said I probably would agree with Mike. Army surplus.
SAS smock.
Yeah. I'm not very good in the fashion department, as you guys can tell. Let's be fair. But if I was to offer anything, I always go to ex-army surplus all the time, showing support at that. Oh, there you go.
Oh, nice.
So it's very lightweight. It's very lightweight, right? The lighting in here is quite bad. But if you look inside, it has a special foam type material that they put in it. And they use all sorts of other lofting materials and stuff as well. And it's all very strategically put in certain places with special stretch panels and all sorts of stuff, eh? But the special forces guys who work in the mountainous environments in the dead of winter, you're talking about your sort of SBS guys or Royal Marines or these, Swedish special forces and stuff. When you see them out in those environments, this is the kind of gear they're wearing, eh? But you're going to pay top dollar for it.
If it keeps you alive, it's pretty Gucci though.
Oh, it's very Gucci. It lasts a long time as well. It's very comfortable.
Oh, there's a tough question. A jacket or a power bank?
Look, it's an
I'm slightly biased. I would actually. I've got jackets for the power banks. Actually, they've got their own little coats. That's how sad I am. But I would go for the. I have got many issues, mate. You've got a torch fetish. Alan's got more jackets than Mr. Ben, and I've got a slight thing about power banks. Ben, I don't even want to go there. We've heard it. We've seen it written in the urinals. That's between you and.
Listen. There was a whole different context them days.
Any other questions on the list, Hawkins?
Oh, yeah, there's a few, mate.
Go for
the
it.
next one is, have any of you guys looked into MeshCore yet? It's a texting and communication device system that works on bandwidth, so the government can't take it down. It's well cheap, from about £20 upwards.
Yeah.
Yes.
So this is Meshtastic. This is MeshCore he's asked about, which is...
I've watched a bit on Andy Kirby's. You seen Andy's stuff lately?
Yes, I do, mate. Yeah, I've actually just switched to MeshCore last Friday when I got back from holiday. I switched everything over to MeshCore where I am. So I
what you thinking?
My repeaters and everything. Miles better. And the reason being is because if you remember from my previous Meshtastic videos that we talked about on the comms one, is Meshtastic was a victim of its own success. So it was never designed primarily to be so successful and to have so many users, and the telemetry and packets that were sent in the background was too heavy, and it would saturate the bandwidth of because it's LoRa, it's very low bandwidth, so it saturated the connection. So basically you ended up with a messaging system where you could see everybody, and if you were in a busy area, MeshCore, I live east of York a little bit, and I've got a few nodes up myself on hills, and other guys have already got it. And so I can reliably communicate to Darlington and back from my house south to Doncaster. And somebody's just bridged the Pennines now, so we've now got comms over to Wigan. So actually Wigan can talk to Darlington or Doncaster. So if you kind of see those sorts of distances that are involved now, it's basically Meshtastic, but with very low background telemetry packets switching about. So it doesn't saturate the link, and it just works a lot better. It'll do 64 hops, I think my mate told me the other day. So Meshtastic is limited to 7 hops. So if you've got 7 nodes, it'll only jump through 7 nodes. MeshCore, because it's designed from from the ground up to be for a low bandwidth link, it can do 64 hops. So if you get enough nodes up around the UK, with MeshCore, you'd essentially potentially get sort of a UK-wide comms network.
For those that don't know, on the Discord channel, and Miss Worm, our awesome moderator, will share it when she gets a minute. The Discord has got a separate channel on the Discord of Meshtastic. We had a push as a group probably about 6 months ago, and we got a lot of people basically uptaking on Meshtastic. But with a lot of things going over and life taking over, it's died a little. There's not been the same push on it, but with the sounds of it, Hawkins, the MeshCore thing might be something we all need to have a chat about, maybe upgrading and changing the firmware to.
Yeah, it's literally just a flash of a firmware on it, mate, and you're good to go. It just depends how many people in your area have obviously taken it on board. Basically, the people who run the repeaters or the routers on hilltops are the guys you need to change over. But yeah, it's definitely something that that's worth looking. And there's a few people already, like in Manchester yesterday, who were up and chatting, and they've got MCOM in the name, which is emergency communications. If case you didn't know. So there's a lot of people asking already because I've got they have room servers. Unlike in Meshtastic, you can just chat to each other.
Yeah.
Well, on Meshcore, it was designed from the ground up to have room servers. So I've got a room server hosted called PrepperNet, and you can basically log into that room server, and it doesn't matter if the other person's online. They can leave a message on the room server. It's like a bulletin board system from the 80s. So if you could only get comms out for a brief period, you could log into the room server, see the messages that will get relayed back to you as soon as you log in, and then you can then message back with what you want and then disconnect again. So
we're almost certainly going to need to have more chats about that as a group then, because that sounds like it's going to be the way to go for us. Obviously Mike's going to need to have a think about it and see what he wants to do, but it sounds for what we want it for, more stable.
Doesn't know what we're talking about. It's basically, and because we didn't give any context there, sorry for anyone who hasn't got a clue, it's an offline messaging system that uses a small radio that Bluetooths to your phone, and you essentially use a program like, I don't know, Telegram or WhatsApp or something, and you can send text messages to each other about 160 count. There you go. Brian's just got it out on camera. I mean, he's got his mesh core out on camera, and you can message each other. So it's a great little system. Meshtastic works if you've not oversaturated the link and if everyone's got the latest firmware and blah blah blah. But if you're in a busy area, it's just completely useless these days, unfortunately. But Meshcore, much more reliability out of it. So yeah,
just a question.
We'll talk about it. Go ahead, Ben.
Is there a way to check around my area if anyone's on Meshcore Meshtastic? Because I was thinking about setting up some nodes down here.
There is a Meshtastic map online if people have let their nodes be discoverable by something called MQQT, and there's the same for Meshcore. A lot of people disable them, so you can't tell. So the only way to find out would be to buy the hardware and find out. But you can do a simple line of sight calculator, so you can go onto a website like heywhatsthat.com, put your home location in, and that will give you a line of sight calculator out to all the hilltops and everything. You'll see how far your signal can get out. So it'll give you an idea of, if you did buy one, how far could I potentially talk to? So if you're in like a mountainous area and you live at the top of a mountain, you might get out for 70 kilometers. If you live somewhere else, you might get, 5 miles or something, like 10 kilometers, something like that. So it depends, mate. But I'll spam some links if you want into the Discord.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I've seen it done, and I've not tried it myself yet. But one of the guys got a little small LoRa transmitter, one of the mesh ones, hot glued it to his Mavic 4 drone, stuck it up in the air, and it gave him coverage over a massive area. He had his own mobile hotspot, and for 30 minutes at a time, he had a 500 meter or 400 feet high satellite, if you like, that was given a huge line of sight area.
Yeah.
So
just for context, I was on a plane the other week, and I may or may not have had a Meshtastic node sitting at the window, and at 11.5 kilometers in height, while I was texting Brian on my satellite messenger, talking about MH370, I was getting 570 kilometers, 580 kilometers distance on Meshtastic, and having reliable talks to people while I was flying past Portugal and Spain and stuff. So yeah, you can, again, it's line of sight. So if you can get the clear altitude on your side, you can get a very long distance.
Stick it on a drone, fire it in the air. It'll give you 30 minutes of comms per battery.
Yeah.
So interesting.
Weather balloons as well.
Yes, on a tether. I've seen that. Before we bore everybody to tears with mesh, well, that might even be something worth doing in an updated video at a later date, because there seems to be a lot of changes we might need to take on board. Have we got any other questions sitting, mate?
We do. Somebody said, in a winter shit hit the fan non-nuclear scenario, would you grow hair longer, including facial hair, for warmth? Yes.
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 Yep. Obviously not on my head because apparently that stopped growing about 3-4 years ago. But I'd still look like Grizzly Adams from the nose down.
I didn't want to mention that, but
Yes, you did. Right, next one, mate.
Here's a good
Do
one.
it. Do it now.
Thanks,
there
Mike.
he goes again. He can't help himself. I've not seen any for a while, so if anybody does, I've got some more to go now. But if anyone does have a question, make sure you put it in caps because otherwise I won't see it because I've been chatting. So next one is: what scenarios do you talk over with your partners? Please, just prepping related. So yeah, not bedroom scenarios, Brian, but what prepping scenarios?
Ah, well, that's me down to 2 topics to talk about. Alan, do you want to take this one first?
I
Well-
don't mind.
Oh, go ahead, Ben. Go ahead.
Only reason I jump in now, and sorry to jump in between you both. Me and
It's all
Mrs.
good.
RP were talking about it only last night. As you guys know, and many other viewers know as well, I like to watch Ukraine and Russia and keep up to date on that. And funny enough, me and Alan were only talking about analysing things a bit more with the state of how things have gone over the last sort of, what was it, Alan? Fortnight, 3 weeks-ish, we was
Yep.
roughly saying. But no, me and Mrs. RP were talking about running different scenarios because the world is ever changing. I mean, one example which I'll tie in with this question is Trump said no more wars, yet he's rebranding the Department of thingy to the Department of War, Department of Defense to Department of War. And it perked both mine and Mrs. RP's ears up. And with us having children, we were saying, look, it's time to do some real life scenarios now. At the end of the day, you've got to prep, you've got to be prepared. And the only way to do so is through what I say, followed by example. So
We had a situation last year, and I spoke about it in one or two videos. I think I'm relatively well prepped, or I try to be. But myself and my wife were out on a cruise ship, probably about 7th of December last year, and there was a power cut back at home. So domestically, the batteries were all full. The power banks were all full. The generator was tested and had petrol in it, but neither my son or daughter had a clue how to access or use any of the preps. Fortunately, we were in port that day, so I was able to talk them through how to turn on power banks and use them in different things. But that was a major failing on my part, that although I had went to the expense and time in procuring preps for my family, it should never be reliant on me actually having to be there to facilitate their use. So yeah, that's discussions need to be had. And the problem is, as preppers, that generally we're tolerated at best by our family, and sometimes you could be actively blocked because they might think you're a nutcase. But fortunately, I'm tolerated rather well. But I was remiss in not educating my family and how to use the kit. So yeah, conversations need to be had. Alan, have you had any scenarios you've ran through with your better half?
Yeah, well, for me, I mean, probably maybe like you, Brian.
Say,
like
Rob.
Lots of other people. My missus has got zero interest in survivalism or prepping or any of this kind of stuff. But there's a few covert sort of ways I've shoehorned it in over the years. I mean, the first one being the general householdy type stuff, the winterization of the house. She's on board with that. And she's on board now with the idea of buying things a little bit ahead of time. So like cooking oils and bulk items and rice and stuff like that. Buying more than you actually need. And then buying more, even though you've got some in the house. She could never understand what the point of that was. You know, now I think she does. But one thing I've always done, and I've done this for years, is I go on a family camping trip a couple of times a year. I try to. I make a point of pointing out exactly where all my stuff is. Most of my stuff's pre-packed anyway, but she helps put everything. She sees the whole process of me taking the items we absolutely need, putting it in the car, the order in which it gets set up, you know, wherever it is we're going, the locations we're going, and things like that. So, I mean, if I was to suddenly drop dead and for some reason she had to sort of not be in the house, with the equipment that I've got, she would be able to at least be in a shelter and have warmth, even in the dead of winter. And she's also aware of where, I think I think she's aware of where 2 of my caches are. I have been toying with the idea of putting a map together. It's, it's a double-edged sword because then you've got a map of all your
Send the
stash.
map to me, Alan, and I'll make sure that your missus gets it and you're incapable.
Yeah, I think I'm going to do an update on the caches soon, and I probably will put some sort of map together for her. Should she need it in some scenario. But yeah, it's a covert thing for me. It has to sort of slip it in as an activity rather than anything else, because if I start talking about this kind of stuff, I can see her eyes glazing over immediately.
I wasn't sure he
Hawkins.
was talking then, Alan O'Brien, when he said covert and slip it in the same sentence.
We're supposed to keep it on the prepping topics. I never mentioned anything sleazy for once. I've left that to you guys to lower the tone.
To be fair,
Have you had
when it's
discussions,
never-
Hawkins?
I discuss stuff. My missus is quite tolerant in regards to the prepping. However, she wouldn't have a clue how to use anything in the house, really. I mean, she's a licensed ham radio operator, but
All right.
could she use it? I don't know. That's the question. I don't know. She's got everything she would need to survive in this house for many, 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 many months. But she'd probably be dead within 3 days, to be honest. So it's something that's on my list, and she's listening in the other room now. So she's nodding away to herself, but she knows that there's scenarios that need to be run through and more learning. She knows how to, well, I say she knows how. She's been shown how to power the house from the solar and the off-grid system to
Excellent.
hook into generator mode and put the 32 amp commando socket in and do that. But I'll probably just write some instructions up, and I need to make like a laminated folder really that can just sit somewhere as a shit hit the fan thing if I'm not here. But yeah, as long as I'm home within a day, she'd be fine. But after a day, she'd just die surrounded by preps that she wouldn't realise. So
The laminated folder is a great idea. Everybody should probably do that.
just if
That
this
is a good
happens,
idea.
If this happens, do this.
Yeah.
Aye, that's a good idea.
Do you want to borrow my satellite messenger for your Florida trip?
No, it's fine, mate. I've got some contingency plans, but thank you, sir. You're a gentleman. Do you find that more or less people are getting involved in prepping?
Ooh,
More.
First,
yeah, I'd say more.
Can I
think-
jump in there 1 second?
Yeah, yeah.
This week. So I've got a friend of mine who's in a prepping signal group that I have, although I wouldn't consider him a full-on prepper, but he's definitely got his eyes open to the world. He's not clueless, certainly. He's one of the smarter people that I know. And hi, if you listen to this. But he is on the back of what I've talked about and on the articles that Catherine, what's her face, puts out about the power
Catherine
grid.
Porter,
Yeah, so he's
she's
just
excellent.
he's just getting quotes off the same solar company I did, and also Octopus, to throw himself the same sort of solar system on with a Tesla Powerwall 3, specifically for anticipated winter power outages. So I see more people opening their eyes and heading towards, a bit more resilience to the fragile system that we potentially live in.
Well, you've touched on the power one there. This is probably an opportune time to slip in this one. Giggity. I heard the snicker before I said anything.
Silence!
Thanks, Mike. The Norwegian energy companies have pressed the panic button and are predicting low head of water. And given that most of their energy is coming from hydro schemes, that could be a problem for people in Europe that are relying on the interconnectors to their grid fed from Norway, which incidentally includes us. Even if they've got enough water, the Norwegian population have got 10 to 15% higher energy bills now because there's more money to be had exporting to us and other countries in Europe. So they've got a political problem now as well, that the natives are getting restless. This has got relevance to us as preppers, as there may come a time that, just for a bit of background, we tend to draw in between 6 to 7 gigawatts a day through the interconnectors from France, Norway, different places. And always in the assumption that that power will be free flowing and always there should we need it. It may not be. So it might be an interesting winter. And off the back of that, the French are offlining 5 nuclear power stations for care and maintenance starting in about October this year. So winter preps, make sure you've got plenty of batteries in case we've got our own problems because of other people's problems. I just thought I'd put that at the end there. I'll go back on topic, sorry. Alan, do you think people in your social circle are more into prepping now or even more inclined to talk about it? What's been your experience?
I think more people generally are inclined to talk about it or maybe even take an interest in it. It's one of these things where I see it as ebbs and flows based on what's in the news cycle. I remember during the pandemic, people were suddenly getting into stockpiling, and they were all virologists, and that became a thing for a while, and then it waned away. There's certainly more news items about World War III type scenarios and doomsday headlines and this kind of stuff. And we're seeing governments across Europe put out pamphlets talking about be prepared, get these 10 items now type stuff. The UK government historically is slow as hell with this kind of stuff. It doesn't advertise it very well. But I think if I was to suddenly start talking about this more at work, there would probably be 1 or 2 people in the canteen that would say, oh, yeah, I'm kind of into that, which, 5-6 years ago would have just been a case of, this guy's a nutcase, and pay no attention to it. But times are definitely changing. So, yeah.
Ben, what's your thinking? Have you noticed people more socially willing to talk about it or engage?
I have. And so is Mrs. RP, especially over our local Morrisons. A lot more people are starting to not talk about being preppers, I will say that, but they're talking about, okay, we need to take in more local essentials. And to be fair, I have noticed that compared to what we went through with COVID, that in a sense being a panic prep, everyone last minute panic buy in, making sure they got everything in. This time it's more subtle. And I've noticed the ebb and flow, like you guys worded it, has slightly changed. There's been a drift in the wind. People are starting to get things in, more so tinned things. First aid. It's like when I did this with my arm, trying to get some actual bandages and things. Most of the first aid kits were sold out. Now, to the naked eye, you look at it and think, oh, it is the summer. Kids are off school. They've had falls. They probably cut themselves, grazed themselves. But then when whispers start getting louder in the proper conversations, that's where we pick up our ears and think, well, hang on. We don't typically hear this on the average day-to-day basis. This is new. But one point I would say is that we've all been preppers in a way, not identifying it, but like back in the war, there was old terms that were coming out, old sayings as we call them now, like a clean kitchen is a healthy kitchen, and what do you call it? A well-prepared mindset is a happy mindset. Things like that. So in a sense, we're used to it. When we're kids and we grow up into being adults, we see our parents, in a sense, cleaning the house. We think, well, why are they cleaning so much? Why do they keep things so clean? Why aren't we hoarders? Because we're year of hoarders. It's all down to preference and how you present your home and yourself. So if you're a clean bacteria levels and all are going to be lower. So, we kind of get used to it. We've gotten used to it over the years. COVID was a big eye opener. And I think now people seeing more uncertainty, and then in a sense, like with what the government has done now with the ID checks and that.
Yeah, I think the reliance on the just-in-time system that we all moved over to, and the cost of living, is pushing people to start thinking more like preppers originally would. The hardship is pushing them into things. People are now suddenly talking about wood burning stoves, not because they think it looks pretty, but literally because the energy bills are so bloody expensive. It just makes more sense to burn wood than it does to burn gas. And, food is getting astronomically expensive now as well. I remember seeing a run on olive oil a while ago because, they had a bad crop in Italy and Spain, and so people were rushing out and buying olive oil. Years ago, nobody would have did that. They would have just went to some other cheap alternative. But now people are starting to get that kind of mindset again, I think. And it's no bad thing. A little bit of hardship wakes people up to the realities that you should be a little bit more in charge of your own destiny and not be relying entirely on very fragile systems or governments.
Exactly. Sorry, go on, dude.
I was going to say, when the fireworks were going off in the Middle East, about a month or so ago, 2 months ago now, I actually had a text message from the next door neighbour saying, what should I get to prepare for X scenario? And I was like, oh, and I linked into the fantastic .gov website that we've made in the UK, and just because I don't want to appear too weird, and just said basically water storage. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, too late. I said start with water storage, and gave him a list of stuff and a radio and this and that. But linked into a bunch of stuff. But he's a very normal person, certainly not anywhere near like us. And for him to ask and seek a little bit of guidance, people are definitely opening their eyes, shall we say.
Do you know what? I think it's time we start realizing that what we do and talk about is normal. We just do it a little bit more than most. And the people who don't do this are the bloody idiots. It really is just that case. If you're literally just living day to day and you think somebody's always going to be there for you, you're the one that's going to feel sorry for yourself if the time comes. Yeah,
that's right. But one final bit, and only because Mrs. RP pointed it out. To do with solar energy, with what you were saying, Brian, people are also getting used to that without realizing it, because a lot of our people around where we live have stopped putting their outside lights on because of the energy prices, and they've been going and getting solar-powered lights.
Yeah,
it's the same principle as just having wires. I know it's not this simple, but just for time constraints, 2 wires running from a solar panel to a backup battery.
Yeah, it really is that simple. That's the problem, and it's all right. You'll have a charge controller between it generally, but
I was going to say sometimes you see some things on Facebook that don't look too good, do you, Brian?
Oh, mate, don't even go there. That's I argued with so many people this week over. I didn't want to see them burning to death. That was the whole premise, and yet they lost their mind. People in the chat might not know I had a little bit of a wobble and a meltdown at some Facebook posts, and it was somebody on one of the Facebook groups had posted a picture of a solar install he had done.
My daughter had done it, hadn't she?
Your daughter would have done a better job, mate. And I don't mean it with disrespect when I say this, but the problem was people were looking at it and saying, that's really good. Could you tell me how you did it? And I said, for the love of God, don't tell them how you did it, because that is the wrong way to do it. You're going to set your house on fire. I'm not going to go into how wrong or why it was wrong, but if I show you how to do something or tell you how to do something, fact check me. I might be wrong. I might be telling you the wrong way to do it, right? Because I'm fallible and I make mistakes. Just because somebody on the internet has got a couple of wires hanging and he flicks a switch and the light works, doesn't mean to say it's earthed and you're not going to get electrocuted when you plug a socket in it. Check your sources for everything, because it may well be full of shit. So, yeah, on that segue, we'll move on to the next question. What you got for us, Hawkins?
To me like the best part of you ran down the crack of your mama's ass and ended up as a brown stain on the mattress.
As always, Mike is harsh, but so very fair.
Backseat host. The next question was, what price do you put on not getting frozen snowed in, though? So I think this was back when we were talking about cars and being stuck at the side of the road. I think it was when this question came through.
We've covered that more or less, haven't we?
Yeah. And then the only one, I think that was pretty much the last one that I've seen as a question, but I have been chatting a bit and listening to you guys, so I've not paid too much attention.
Mike, do you have anything stored away to link up for us, perchance? Or is it just funny comments?
Oh, here's one.
I wanna be like Mike.
Nobody wants to be like Mike at the moment with his red raw bottom. With everything going on in the UK and the powers that be using their ECHR against us, how do you see the UK going in the next 6 months?
Oh, right, Hawkins, since you read it, you can answer this one first then. Go for it. How do you see it going?
Everything going on in the UK and the powers that are being used by the European Court of Human Rights against us, how do you see the UK going in the next 6 months? Same way as it's going for the last fucking 60 years, but a lot of years downhill.
16 years.
Yeah, I kind of losing faith with the country, to be honest, and I don't see it directly day to day. Like where I live, I don't see the effects of everything that's going on. But if you open your eyes to the news and to what happens, you can see it. I'd hate to live in some areas of the country, and I think that I think the whole political system's broken. At the end of the day, as Alan will probably interject in a minute, the politicians are there to serve us. We are the constituents. We vote them into power, and the majority rules. Except for them, we get somebody in power who doesn't listen to the majority and do whatever they want to serve their own agenda. And from everybody I speak to on a daily basis, the country is not run how the vast majority of people want it to be run. So yeah, downhill basically. I don't see it getting any better in the short term, that's for sure. And that's as much as I'm willing to say about politics on camera.
It's fair enough. Ben, what's your thoughts on the trajectory of the government or the country as a whole?
If you can, come to me last, because I've got my documents up, because I've actually got a bit on this.
Okay. Alan, you're in the hot seat, mate. What's your thoughts?
Well, I would say, I mean, it's definitely the case that the country is still going down on a downward trajectory, especially when it comes to things like our freedom, speech, what we can and can't do, what we can and can't own. I was talking yesterday on Shadow's podcast about the laws around owning things like parangs and machetes. I've got a parang, and that's the kind of thing the government here will eventually make illegal. It's not individually party political, because it's happening across different political parties. Because I would say it's been happening roughly since 2012, the downward spiral of the way the system. Yeah, I mean that's kind of when it started really bottoming out, and it happens more so in the more devolved parts of the UK, especially. I would say Scotland right now is probably the most totalitarian part of Britain, in my opinion. And it's not because I care about what political parties run in the place. It's just because of the things they're saying and doing. I mean, even us now always self-censor ourselves, and we shouldn't have to do that. We should never have to self-censor ourselves. It's ridiculous. I do think there will be some sort of backlash. I don't think it'll be like some sort of like rebellion or revolution or anything like that. But it's definitely the case that the current UK government is purely there because everybody hated the previous government, and it's a two-party race. So there is nobody else to vote for. You'll probably see a difference in the next election with fringe parties like Nigel Farage's party and Jeremy Corbyn's party and stuff. Those are protest parties. They'll eventually wean out and disappear, I think, as well. And it will eventually become back to normality. But in the meantime, I think we're in for 5-6 years of this kind of pish, to be honest. And as preppers or survivalists, the only thing we can do is try and get around it by, keeping some stuff to ourselves, which we have to do. That's the self-censorship aspect of it, keeping an eye on what's going on the horizon. But world events will probably change it. The election of Trump changed everything. Trump getting in power for the second time ended the woke era. Thank God. I mean, that's now dying on its arse. That was a big political aspect of our culture as well. That's where a lot of the anti-free speech stuff was coming from. We're seeing a little bit of a backpedaling of that now in the UK, and hopefully that will continue. But I can't see it getting any better really in the short term. I think in the long term it will, but we just have to navigate our way around it. And for what I see, preppers and survivalists generally aren't very political. They have opinions, and it's usually anti-establishment. But they're not I've never heard anybody bang on about how the Tories are great and Labour's pish, or vice versa, or whatever. It seems to be very neutrally, they're all shit.
I'd vote Brian as Prime Minister if it was up to me.
I'd vote me as well, mate. I think, my personal opinion, it's been discussed and hinted more than once that what has politics got to do with prepping? Everything, because who you vote in, or the 4 years, 5 years that they're in power, will directly affect your children at school, what they're taught, who teaches them, how likely you are when you flick the light switch that something will actually happen, where you'll have gas, your food prices, everything. So whilst it's not politically aimed or directed, it's just like Alan had said, as preppers, you'll have an opinion, and you should have an opinion. You're entitled to your opinion. We don't have to agree, but we should be aware of who's in charge, who may be in charge, and who was in charge, because this will shape what your preps may have to be. The current state of things, I watch a guy, Black Belt Barrister. You've probably seen him on YouTube. I quite like his channel.
I watch him.
I like him. He's quite level-headed, and I just follow him. I like him. We're very much still in the case of hurty feelings. If you say anything and it hurts somebody's feelings, in Scotland they passed laws, you can be arrested for that. You can be lifted for hurting somebody's feelings. It's nuts. We talk about common sense, and yet you rarely encounter it in your day-to-day activities. We need to get common sense back into all facets of life. And until we do that, I think the UK is going to be an unpleasant place. So, Ben, what have you got for us? It's over to you now.
Thank you very much. And yes, while I have the hot seat. So basically going back to the ECHR, the short take, the next 6 months is going to look bumpy but stable, because the way I've seen things go, the more peace that is spoken about, the more human rights that is spoken about, the more UN meetings there have been, there's been more increases in activity in Russia against Ukraine, and actively showing aggression against British, I think it was the British consulate or the
Yeah, they blew it up.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah, they blew it up this week.
There you go. So human rights obviously out the window in that regard, right? So for the next 6 months, so we're talking from what we know, August going into September, so say September. Between now and March, I'd say it's going to be stable, but, and I hate to be the one to say this because then it's like, oh, you're pushing politics, but politics is going to be dominating most of the economic and human rights news. It's going to shadow most of it. So to the eyes of the public, it's going to be what we've seen now. It's like what Hawkins said. It's going to be what we've seen now. It's going to be a gradual destabilization, if you want, then, to do with Epping, since the council have unfortunately won the overrule. That, I think, would push more into the sort of civil war, not a proper civil war, but a civil war in a sense for mass protesting.
Unrest,
yeah. Thank you. Yes. And see the sheer volume of protests grow in mass. So as for main state things such as energy bills, household bills, things like that, they're going to get worse. So you want a sort of 10-15% buffer in your wallet this winter, just in case. You never know. But no, next 6 months, unless something drastically happens with NATO and Russia, Ukraine, it's just going to be stable but shaky.
Do you talk about civil unrest? Last night in my YouTube feeds, for the first time ever, I got a Tommy Robinson thing.
Yeah, so did we.
Did you? Yeah, for the first time ever.
September 13th.
I can't remember, to be honest. I'd had 3/4 of a bottle of gin at the time. But yeah, last night a Tommy Robinson thing came into my YouTube feeds, and I took notice of that for the fact that I thought, oh, that's quite inverted commas. If you can see the camera, you can. Right wing, to see that pop up, and I thought that's not very YouTube-esque to be pushing that sort of content out. And I questioned what was going on, really, to myself, thinking it's not YouTube-like, is it, to be doing that sort of stuff? But that was, pushing to my feed last night. It was come look at this.
Unusual.
We're seeing a difference with the social media companies now. That's the Trump effect. This is what I was talking about earlier on. So at one point, you would never have seen something like that on YouTube or Facebook or anything, because it's 100% left-leaning, woke-leaning content, and that's not a conspiracy theory. They openly admitted that. That's literally just the direction they were pushing. Since Trump has come to power, they've started relaxing the boundaries as to, to try and level the game up a little bit. So now it's more a case of, okay, let some of this more right-leaning stuff in, whether it be Tommy Robinson or whoever else. I follow a podcast called the Dark Horse Podcast. If anybody follows that, it's not particularly. It's neither left nor right wing. He's a scientist. It's Brett Weinstein and his wife. They're scientists, they're biologists, but they talked a lot about COVID, and they had their YouTube account basically suspended for years during the COVID pandemic because they were kind of anti the vax and all that kind of stuff. They had nearly 500,000 subs at that point, I think, so it was a big deal to them. They, out of nowhere, last week got their account reinstated, and they talked about it on their podcast. Says that's interesting. Why did that happen? And so have many other accounts on YouTube started getting reactivated, and that is an indication. I mean, some people might say that's just nature healing, but it might also simply be a change in the political winds of what we're seeing.
Okay. Have we got any other questions there, Hawkins, waiting in the wings?
I got one from Philip. Who's Philip from our Discord, who says, with things heating up with Russia, China, talk of digital IDs, riots, etc., any particular prep focus / tips on other than winter prep? So, yeah, anything other than winter that relates to Russia, China, digital IDs or riots?
We talk about personal opinion. We talk about preps. Preps doesn't always have to be buying more. Part of it should be maintaining what you've already got. So we sometimes neglect, we buy things and forget about it and don't maintain it. That could be something as simple as you go into your cupboard or your pantry and you get your tins, you give them a shake, you activate them, stop them settling, give them a little wipe down with a duster, put them back on the shelf. You make sure your power banks are charged, your generator, if you've got it, you've run it. All your food stocks and containers, there's been no little furry friends in about them. Where you store your things, there's no mouse droppings or anything. If you've got a generator, you've had it serviced before the winter time, you've got fresh fuel in it. So your radios are charged, or your radios have got batteries, the radios are wound up, your walkie-talkies are charged and tested. Everything that you've got, you've checked it. A note in your diary, on your phone. Prep maintenance is just as important as buying the preps. So that would be my nugget of wisdom for what little it's worth. Ben, what's your thoughts?
Hold on for a second. I just need to jump in here, right? Because if you look at the screen there, you can see Kelly I has just put up, can you prep for economic collapse? Gold isn't for everyone, blah, 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 blah. I do not see that in the YouTube chat. So I've got the YouTube chat open in a window, and I don't see his comment at all.
Oh, I can't see any of them at the moment, sorry.
And the funny thing is, when I'm messaging, I've noticed it twice now, my messages are going through 3 times.
Well, I can't chat in the YouTube chat, so I've been banned for like 4 weeks now, saying to Brian earlier, whenever I type a message into the chat and what goes press enter, it won't send. I'm still a moderator. I can still moderate other people's groups and chats, but I can't type into the YouTube chat. But I can see Kelly I chatting in the stream chat that he's bought, but I can't see it in my YouTube chat. So sorry, Kelly, if I'm not answering your questions, but yeah, I just find that very weird. I just wanted to jump in for a second.
No, that's fine, mate. We'll flag that and we'll come back to it. We'll try and catch up with these questions as long as you've got time to keep going.
I'm free for as long as it takes. But what was the question now? Because I've forgotten.
What was the question again, Hawkins?
With things heating up with Russia and China, talk about digital IDs, riots, etc. Any particular prep focus / tips other than winter preps?
Oh, right. Yeah. Okay, cool. Right. So, being in our field of expertise, as we will say, not experts, but I mean it in the sense of we spend too much time watching the Ukraine and Russia conflict. But it's sad, really. But for us, our personal opinions, so take them as you will with a pinch of salt, people, but definitely get more essential preps in, food-wise. Like Brian said, with your tins, shake them down, don't let them settle. It's the quickest way that they'll start to go bad quicker than their expiry date. Make sure you do a little bit of gardening if you have access to your own garden. even if it's just a couple of carrots or a couple of potatoes, it don't matter. It doesn't need to be massive, and you don't need to label yourself a prepper. But with China, Taiwan, the US now going from whole anti-war to I declare war on Venezuela, basically. I'm not saying that's what has been said because it hasn't been a declaration of war, but you know,
It's
they're
not far off,
kind of
is it?
saying it in a nutshell. With
They've moved
renaming
troops to the. They've moved the Navy ships with Marines on them.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, for us, just be responsible when you're out and about. Think, would I need an extra few of these or a few of those? And if you've got the budget, do it. If you don't break the bank, because if the banks go down, you've got nothing. Not
It's
unless
fair
you
enough.
prepped and got cash.
Alan, have you got any nuggets of wisdom for the viewers?
Do you know, I would say, with all the things that go on in the world, I mean, it's too hard to prep for everything. You can prep generally for yourself and your own well-being and your household, basically. And off the back of that, you can try and approach any emergency that comes your way. You know, obviously prep individually for individual things. If you live in like a hurricane zone or an earthquake zone or a flood zone or something like that, prep seasonally a little bit as well. But I think it's a good idea to take a little bit of take stock, take inventory of what's going on and what you can control. None of us can control what the politics is going to be in Russia or China or Taiwan or the Middle East or any of these places. But what we can do is take a look at where we're getting our information from. We've already spoke a little bit on this discussion about how the government is censoring us a lot. We know we're under a lot of constraint. We know we're not seeing all the information we're supposed to have, and we know we're being heavily, heavily censored. I used to watch Russia Today just for the hell of seeing what they were saying, even though I know it was nonsense. But see the fact that it's now blocked in the country without a VPN, that annoys me, because that's being deliberately taking something away from us.
That's different, because you got, obviously, from what I assume by what you said, you can still access certain ones through a VPN. We can't, don't you?
Well, there's ways and means. I don't know which VPN you're using. It depends which server that you click on. So some countries in Europe, for example, are also blocking RT today. So if you go into their server in the Netherlands, you'll probably still not get it because it's blocked there too. But
Highly recommend
yeah. There's ways of that. So I mean, I would say take digital stock of your preps, your digital preps. Your digital preps are your information. Where are you getting your sources from? I like to boil it down. I've got like 6 podcasts I listen to. I've got 4 news sources. I've got a couple of mainstream ones. I listen to Radio 4 and stuff at work. That's my mainstream information for the UK. I follow a bit of American politics. I follow some British politics. I follow some Scottish politics. I leave it at that. I don't go mental with it because it's not my expertise and there's nothing I can do about it anyway. Off the basis of all that, plus the Discord chat and chats like this, it gives me a little bit of a picture to know, what I'm doing. I've got no trust in institutions, so I don't trust institutions now, full stop. So I tend to go by, it's a red flag to me if an institution says, suddenly do this. Suddenly pay attention to IDs, or suddenly pay attention to energy costs. I watch that with caution and I'll prep accordingly to that. I don't have unlimited money, so all the things I would love to do, I could list them off all day. I'd be in a bunker surrounded by gold, and what I mean. So would we all. But
we'd all be in that bunker, mate.
Yeah, we have to be realistic about what we can genuinely do as preppers or survivalists.
That's right. No, I agree with you there. It's mad at the minute, though.
Hawkins, you want to take a stab at it, mate?
Things heating up in Russia, China, and talking about ID. Well, if it kicks off between China and Taiwan, then buy everything you need now. If it needs a microchip, buy it now, basically. I don't know. It's the same. You reach a level of prepping where you're happy with where you are, or you think you are, and then you tell your wife that you're happy where you are. And then 2 weeks happens, and you realize
you buy something else.
I want this or that, and again, it depends on your circumstances, doesn't it? Like my preps for this week was permanently mounting my Starlink in the back garden, running the wires down to the garage, and feeding it in, and having my backup internet essentially, which you might think. Is that a prep? Is it not? It's a prep in one way.
What's a prep?
Would somebody censor internet and Starlink still be it? I think would Starlink still not be censored potentially because it's American, and if Elon Musk hates Starmer, if Starmer shut down the internet to the UK, would Elon Musk keep it open for any Starlink people potentially? But I don't know. You reach a level, don't you, where you're happy with where you are, and I'm reasonably there. But again, I keep finding things and going, oh yeah, I quite like that, and I'll buy that, and I'll
buy two.
Yeah, you know exactly what it's like, Brian. You always find stuff, don't you? But it's other than winter, yeah. So I think that's it. Other than winter preps, that's yeah. If China goes into Taiwan, and you talk Russia and China, and they go into Taiwan, then if you've not already got it and it's electronic, it's either going to go up in value massively, and you're not going to be able to get hold of it at all. So it depends. If you're more like Alan, who I don't think is much of a technology prepper, you'll be all right because you'll just happily live off a forest somewhere and whatnot. Although he's also realistic and he's got a kid, I think, and a missus, so they probably won't be too happy with it long term. But if you're an absolute tech freak like myself, then you'll realise that everything that you buy, like radios and this and that and da-di-da, it's all just going to skyrocket in price. So
Oh yeah.
buy it when you can. So yeah.
Will we have a stab at Kelly's eyes question now then? Can you prep for economic collapse?
Yeah.
Gold isn't for everyone, or even silver. So what will people do for safe money?
Copper.
Go for it, Ben. Have a stab.
Copper. The price of copper might be really low, but say it all goes completely to shit and the economy collapses. The one thing there's still a massive abundance of, which you can make a lot of things out of and still sell for tidy profit if you can make money, and you can still make money out. I think money was made from copper years ago. Copper. It's in boilers. It's throughout the houses. And if it was really a bad shit at the fan scenario and there's houses that have been bombed and it's all gone to total shit with the economy as well.
And if you want electricity, you're going to be using a lot of copper.
There you go.
Hawkins, what's your thoughts?
It's just items, isn't it? So I've got a tiny bit of gold. When I say tiny bit, I mean like fingernail size pieces of those little 1 gram gold bars that you can buy. And I've got a couple of silver coins, and the idea was to keep buying them every month. But bloody babies are expensive, aren't they? So I stopped that a while ago. Might pick you up again soon, you never know. But yeah, if gold isn't for everyone, I think Ben's got some of there. Copper is a valuable metal. But just useful items, if it was ever to go Pete Tong, if you've got, like I've got an ammo tin with about, 200 lighters in it. That if you ever listen to that guy who survived in was it the Balkans? That guy who done the write-up, did you ever listen to that or read that?
Don't heard that one, mate.
Sarajevo.
Oh, yeah.
Did you ever read that, anyone? Oh, right, I'll have to find it. Basically, he was in, I don't know, the Balkans somewhere when all that shit went off in the 90s or whatever it was. And they all got kind of surrounded and couldn't leave their town or their city for like years. And they lived the shit hit the fan scenario. And the only people who survived were people who were in families, basically, and the families bound together. And basically, if you had a lighter or could sell a lighter, it was worth its weight in gold, literally. So items like that, I suppose, if you want to talk about money or preps in a shit hit the fan scenario, something that somebody hasn't got, isn't it? That somebody needs. Yep. So water filtration, the ability to make fire, the ability to keep warm, the basic human necessities, essentially.
I think spinning it on its head, preparing for an economic collapse doesn't mean that you have to prepare by having a valuable metal to exchange. It could be a product, because ultimately, if you have things that you would have bought with money and money has got no value, but you've bought the things that you would have bought with money, then you don't need to worry about an economic collapse, because primarily that's going to be power, food, fuel. If you've already got these things, then you have got a buffer for an economic collapse. So your generic prepping, once again, will encompass and cover for a multitude of SHTF scenarios, including this one. What's your thoughts, Alan? Have you got any spin on that?
Yeah, that's definitely true what you say. I mean, you can't eat gold and silver. I mean, that's the thing. And see, back in the pioneer days, I do lots of historical research into like the pioneers and things like that in the United States and medieval times in the UK, because that for me is the foundation of what survivalism is. And weirdly enough, nails in the pioneer days were a very, very high prized item. Nails in a complete SHTF situation are you just can't get them. You can't make them easily. They don't come across them easily, and they're the kind of item that once they're gone because people use them and hoard them. So I've got like bags of them just because I always had that in my mind that was so valuable in the pioneer days. Gold and silver. I mean, I've got a little bit as well. I mean, I've got. It's not for everybody. I've got some these 1/10 silver coins. Here's some gold. The problem with this kind of stuff, right? Take a look at this.
What's your address again?
This is you can't really see it well, but this is just 1/10 pure gold, right? That cost me about 130 quid at the time. It's about 190 pounds now, just for this tiny little piece. It's about the size of a 5p piece, right? The silver equivalent to that, by the way, is only, I think it cost like £14 or something when I bought it. The problem is, in an SHTF situation, and I need some flour, a couple of bags of flour, and I go to the baker and I have this, which to my mind is worth 200 quid. He's going to say, "Yeah, I'll give you a bag of flour for it."
Nobody knows what it's worth, do they?
Exactly,
and so that system all over again.
Which is why I kind of go with the little tiny bits of silver, which aren't really worth much, though. That's the problem. But if you're moving away from currency, then yeah, it's definitely the case to buy the things you need now that you think you would need to buy in the future. As it happens, I actually think economic collapse is quite likely. I think that's going to happen in this country very soon. I genuinely think we're going to see a massive economic collapse. I think we're going to see it in the next year.
Alongside France and...
Yeah,
yes.
I think the national debt for the UK, Europe and the United States is astronomical, and it's about to burst.
Do you not think that Russia and China, who obviously are angels themselves, have not got themselves into quite the same levels of national debt as the West, and typically sit on quite large stockpiles of natural materials and minerals and gold and metals and things? I feel like from some of the speeches I've listened to from Putin and stuff, I sit there and think they kind of realise the writing's on the wall for us, and they're just sitting back and waiting for our world to collapse.
Well, do you know why it is? It's because Russia and China have got something that the West hasn't got, and that is that they have
for 30 years.
Yeah, they have a political system that can forecast and plan decades in the future, because they have either dictatorships or communist party setups. So it's easy for China to say, okay, for the next 30 years we're going to play this game, whereas in the UK, for example, we've got 4 or 5 year periods, and you can see they promise the world, and then the budget reality hits them in the face, and then it all goes to hell. Then they blame each other, and then you go through the political cycle again. How many prime ministers has there been since Putin's been president? Yeah, I mean, for him, it doesn't matter. They can play the long game. And see, to be honest, and this is controversial, probably to the highest point, but China is just smarter than us. They're just smarter. They always have been. They've been poorer, but they're smarter. And because they've got the land mass, the population, and the know-how, they will get ahead of us eventually, and we're going to start seeing that soon. The one thing that we've got again, and that we have that they haven't got, and I think will in the long run be at their disadvantage, is they run the communist system, which I personally believe is a failed system. Even the Chinese version of it, which isn't the same as the old Soviet Union, their system eventually will collapse, and that'll happen. But who knows when that'll happen? Maybe they're the one example in the world.
In the voice of Mel Gibson, we've got our freedom.
You can't spend it though. I take it, going by the tone of the conversation, everybody in the chat has seen the recent articles about the French potentially having to go to the IMF for a bailout.
Yep.
And the market is pretty much saying that the UK will be on their coattails shortly thereafter if that happens. So for anybody that's watching the show that doesn't know, that is actually what's happening at the moment. The predictions and word in the street is that the French may need a bailout, primarily because of their very, very strong unionised, and it doesn't give them a lot of capital and headway as a government to make choices, unpalatable choices. So they don't have a lot of movement and wiggle room to make changes. So between that and their pension, they're in the crap a little with cash. And the UK is greatly different, and we are also running a huge budget deficit, and we're predicted to be falling on their coattails shortly thereafter. So the question on a financial collapse may be more pertinent than we would like to believe, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's not an if, it's a when.
Yeah,
On
I mean,
that
there's lots of dispute about it because it was the Telegraph that originally ran with that story, and the BBC are already denying it, and so are a few other news outlets saying that it's just hysteria and stuff like that. But even without the IMF stuff, I think we're heading for a collapse anyway, because you only need to look at the debt numbers to realise that we spend more on the interest of our debts than we do on our defence.
Yeah.
Historically, when that's happened in any other country in the world, you've had a complete collapse. It has to collapse. I mean, imagine running your own personal household. Like, imagine paying your bank more interest than your house was worth and what you spent on everything else in your house. And more than you earn. Eventually, you're going to go bust. So
Yes.
are we. You know, the problem is the Chinese own a lot of the debt of the United States and the UK. So it might actually be a good idea for suddenly us to have a conflict with the people who hold the largest share of our debt so that we can write it off. You know, and you know, there's a big game going on in the world that we're not party to. We can only see on the fringes, and there's lots of much smarter people than me out there trying to work this stuff out. But you know, we're coming to a point somewhere, and to me, it looks like economic collapse or some sort of mass conflict, or both. You know, I said this on Discord the other day. I see that coming, and I'm not generally one of these people that thinks the DX is around the corner. I really am, but something's happening, and historically something does happen eventually. It's just a matter of time, you know, and we're long past the sell by date for it happening to us.
Yeah, but we touched on it in Discord, me and you, literally a couple of days ago, and it's like you said to you then, and on WhatsApp, it's not just the UK but the EU as well is in a sprint, and they have been in the last 6 months, where China, Russia, and North Korea, I believe, are all in the endurance race, in a sense. If you look back over history, those three main have always dragged their heels but come out on the best end, in a sense, of both economics and investment. We're still in mass debt, and we're shelling out. What was it we shelled out recently on the new air defense systems we had that we just purchased?
It's a drop in the ocean of what the military budget should be, and it's largely lipstick in a pig, because with the saturation of air defense systems that's going on in Ukraine at the moment, we're buying technology that was primarily built to fire an expensive missile at an expensive plane, and therefore the figure stacked up. We are going backwards and stagnating, whereas the innovation that's happening in Europe at the moment and the warfare changes, we shouldn't be buying that sort of shit. Yeah, the big expensive flashy bombers and things and fighters have still got to be taken out, but it's when the submarine comes up to your shore and zaps these expensive things with a cheap missile, or fires drones out the conning tower that cost a couple of $100. I don't think in the West we've embraced the changes in Europe. We're watching it, we're aware of it, but it just takes us so slow. We're so slow in making any changes. So
we've seen what the Ukrainians did to that Russian airport with a truck full of drones. They wiped out billions of dollars worth of bombers. And then not long after that, I remember watching that and thinking, surely places like Bryce Norton will stick all their stuff in hangars now, you know, as a safeguard. And then we get bloody climate protesters or Palestine protesters, whatever they were, literally just running in with electric scooters and throwing paint over them. Now, imagine that was an incendiary device or a drone or something else. And they even got away. They didn't even get caught until God knows how many days afterwards. We're
And that'll
incredibly
have been
vulnerable.
watched.
We're stuck in the Stone Age when it comes to this stuff.
Yeah, massively.
Sky Saber, I think we've only got about 9 active systems. It's 8 or 9, and one of them's not even in the country. And assuming that those ones work, we don't even have a fraction, not even a fraction of the air defence that Ukraine's got at the moment. It's embarrassing and worrying in the same breath. But that aside, will we move on if there've any more questions? Hawkins, what's the story?
I've not seen any more, mate. Unless anybody throws any in the chat now with caps on them. But I think my chat's filtered, mate. I don't see anywhere near the amount of comments that I see in the bottom of the live screen now.
Unless MD's getting. On you go. Sorry, Ben. On you go, buddy.
It's only a quick one because I don't think I've actually heard anyone mention it. It's a bit of a simple one, even for the chat. So I want to see if chat knows. We don't even know locations or anything, but do all of you know, just off the top of your head, where your fuse box is? I know it sounds like a little bit of a quirky quiz, but no, genuine thing. I ran through Mrs. RP with this. Do you know where your fuse box is and your gas and your water stop taps are?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very basic prep. Everybody should learn that stuff. Funnily enough, I did not know where my water stop was when I lived in a flat about 10 years ago, and I pulled a wash machine out and the hose was burst everywhere. I flooded my entire flat because of that. It wasn't even an easy tap to get to, so I learned the lesson the hard way with that.
Well, I didn't know where our water one was.
Have you seen this?
That's an excellent point, Ben.
Yeah, Mike's trying to cut us off because he's so jealous that we've got more people watching the live tonight than he's ever had in the past.
We've covered a lot, and as always, it's great to see so many people in the chat that you're willingly give up your Sunday evenings to listen to us prattle on a lot of bollocks. And unfortunately, the eye candidate is young Michael is unavailable this evening, so you've had to put up with us. So thanks for bearing with us for the last hour and 52 minutes. Hawkins, there's no point coming to you because you don't have a channel yet. Ben, is yours up and running?
It is.
There's no yet.
I've put stuff up today.
As Mike always likes to do, it's your chance to tell us all about it and sell yourself. So go for it.
Well, I'll skip the pleasantries. I'll just say we're Renegade Preppers UK. Check us out wherever the link is that Miss Worm does for us, and catch you guys over there.
Awesome, mate. Short and sweet. Alan?
Yeah, the World Survivalist channels, mostly outdoory type stuff, wild camping, kit reviews, a little bit I'm doing a little bit more of these lives now all of a sudden, so there's some of that stuff on there as well. I'm trying to include more prepper related stuff, and I've got some plans for the channel next year that'll be interesting, I think. So yeah, that's where I'm at.
Good stuff. Although Hawkins doesn't have a YouTube channel, it's worth mentioning and pointing out that, like Miss Worm, he does a lot of things in the background that people don't always see. So he spent a lot of time helping out the community with comms in a big way. So the radio plan and different things, and a lot of the information Mestastic on Discord has been down to his efforts. So thank you very much, sir, for your hard work as always.
Thanks, Hawkins.
And my sarcastic sense of humour on Discord.
As Mike's just posted, our very own Miss Worm, a published author no less, and all the other mods who help out. Evil Girl herself helps out in the Facebook group and spends a lot of time on that as well. There's a lot of people do a lot for UK Prepper Network that they don't see the light of day. So thank you very much, guys. Other than that, nothing more to say other than a quick cheerio, and Mike's doing a I think he's uploading a video of his bike ride at 10 o'clock. So that gives you 5 minutes to get a cup of coffee, a cup of tea, and go and support him for his efforts.
So what you're telling me, Brian, is that now we get to sit back and watch Mike suffer in pain during a YouTube video.
Yeah, I may need tissues and lube for this, so I'll better get ready.
Silence!
On that note, guys, thanks for your time, and we'll see you later.
Cheers.
Later, folks.
Take care,
Cheers,
all.
Brian. See you all and see you, man.
In the glow of embers dance, we've prepared for every chance. Living simple, living true, with the dream we all pursue. In the glow of embers dance, we've prepared for every chance. Living simple, living true, with the dream we all pursue.
I'm Brian! I'm Brian! I'm Brian! I'm Brian! I'm Brian and so's my wife! Right, take him away and release him. No, I'm only joking. I'm not really Brian.